So the process is that Arma asks for first impressions, and it took us a while to get this completely done. I think we got started in good time, but we had a leg after the visits were made. So Arma asked for first impressions, and Oswego agreed to be its partner. And the hour drive between the two of you is almost exactly what we like, far enough away that you're not too familiar with each other. We trained the visitors and in February and took photos in March, and 3 Oswego visitors visited your town in March. You can see their dates there on the top of your record that you have in your hands. What's in your hands is the verbatim copy of what they wrote. 3 visitors. They're always in the same order, so you can kind of get the impression of what people's basically how they reacted to things. There are usually positive and negative people, and you can kind of get that sense when you go through it. The results are shared here tonight, and we hope that it'll be the start of conversations for your community as you go forward. There are going to be things in here that you're probably going to disagree with. In fact, I disagree with them. In fact, they disagree with each other. But it's really just a starting place for conversations. We're not here to accredit your town and say it's good or bad or anything else, but just, we lose track of what things look like when we're very, very familiar with them. And so it's our idea to give you the opportunity to take a fresh look. And when we see an observation that we don't agree with it, it's important to just be curious. Why would somebody perceive it this way? What could we change to lessen their confusion about that? So one thing I loved when I learned about it was asset-based community development. And basically that says that you can look at things as if people and communities are simultaneously half empty and half full. We all have problems, we all have opportunities. But if we talk about only our problems, then it's a Debbie Downer for the whole town. But if we look at a problem as what's here that we can change, then the whole aspect, our trajectory changes about what's possible. And we hope that's what you'll do. So let's start first, though, with research about rural communities, because we have things in our minds about what's true, and it's not necessarily true. So let's look at the research. Ben Winchester is a senior research fellow and sociologist from the University of Minnesota, and he says that we need to change our narrative about rural. What we always talk about is the brain drain, right? We know that kids go away to college and they don't come back. That's what the story that we tell. But the truth of the matter is, for 50 years, we can show research that says people do go away, but then many times they come back. And many times, I'm curious to know, of the 5 of you in that room there, how many of you would be people who moved away and then came back, or chose to live here for the first time? Just by a raise of hands. 1 out of the 5 of you? That's
moved away and came back. And everybody else has been here for good. Yes and no.
Yeah. Well, it's not unusual, as odd as it sounds, in towns just like yours. I've had half the room hold up their hands. It really is shocking. But here's what's true. People research a number of places before they move to a rural town. And your community, just like mine, I'm here in Topeka, Kansas, where I live. And just like me, your life, you are in the middle of everything. You live one place, you work another place, and you play another place. With transportation and internet, it's all accessible to you. I live in a town of 125,000, and yet I chose a job that's 60 miles from me. So go figure, it's not any different when you're in a big town. This is surprising, isn't it? Ben says that 46% of Kansas households moved in 4 years between 1995 and 1999. And while that research is getting a little bit old now, I've seen research, there's a moving van that does that research every year. And Kansans are very mobile. In a survey of newcomers, and this was done in rural Nebraska, the reasons they come are a simpler pace of life, safety and security, affordable housing, outdoor recreation. Boy, the pandemic really brought that to our mind. We value and cherish our outdoor recreation now. Quality schools, and guess what? A job isn't at the top, in the top 10 reasons that people go choose a community. But communities can work together to create a more welcoming atmosphere. In small towns, we have the idea that everyone knows each other. And boy, is it a surprise to me. It's no longer a surprise to me, but it was at the beginning of my service when I would go to a very small town and realize how many people didn't know each other, or even for that matter, they didn't know extension. And so we have to make a concerted effort to get to know each other. In fact, Ben recommends inviting people to a newcomer's meal periodically, just and people will look around and say, I had no idea that there was that many people who were new to our community. I'm not going to read every piece on the screen. You'll have these PowerPoints later. It's a tug and pull because I never know how quickly to go if I don't read it to you, but so pardon me as I do more than I should. Don't say you have to live here 20 years to be an insider, and then don't act like it either. Now here I think is an important piece to know. 75% of rural homeowners are baby boomers and older, and 30% are over 75. So I had to read that again to understand that 75% are baby boomers, and that would be, you know, people born before the age of 1960, and 30% are over 75. And when you think about the people that you know that are that age, they are many times very, very healthy. They're not going into a nursing home, but maybe they don't want to take care of a yard anymore. And Ben proposes that instead of building new 3 and 4 bedrooms houses, we build smaller, more manageable retirement housing for those who want to downsize and leave behind that family home for somebody else who can appreciate it. So let's look at the data about your community. The 2010 census said that you had 1,469 people. I'm a little worried about the numbers in the 2020 census, and I'd be curious to know whether this feels right to you. This does feel pretty good, but there are some communities that it really looks off. Oswego's data is one of them. But you decreased by 4%. And the data that I'm comparing this to is the Pittsburgh micro area comparison, which I'm really happy that I have that now, because in the past I've compared it to Kansas, and regionally that didn't always compare very well. Median household income is a little bit lower than the micro area. High school education is dead on, and this is for people that are 25 or above. Your college education is a little bit lower. Your median age is significantly higher, actually, than the Pittsburgh area. And back to Ben Winchester's point, only 31% of your people are 65 and above, but those are the people who might be ready and willing to move into more manageable housing. I'm here in a condo in Topeka. We moved here when we were in our 50s and didn't want to take care of the yard anymore. And it feels like a huge relief. In the past year, the data say that 16% of the people in your community moved just in the past year. The poverty rate is just a little bit, a little bit lower than the regional poverty rate. And you are a very white neighborhood. I don't think that will surprise you. So initially, we asked people to look at the web presence before they go to the community. And these are varying. I split them up so that they were more manageable. Obviously, there are 3 observers, but I tried to make some 4 distinct points. One person said that the website offered a lot of information. Another person said there wasn't a lot of information, but they used local newspaper articles and social media to check it out. Love the list of businesses and the locations of the offices. They found it very easy and informative. Now, here's the problem. In searching for that website, I came to the realization that you don't manage this website. And in talking to Betty Larson, I realized that there's a little bit of a tug of war that's taking place between a private citizen and the city of Alma. And while this isn't really, I think it's website as well, but that's just not a healthy situation. And I hope that person will resolve the issue, because we need to be representative of the community and not one person's idea. There is a Facebook that I almost always see. It's called Things to Do. Facebook generates this. And I've been told by other communities that if you wanted to, you could appropriate this and take it over for yourself. But it's not a problem as long as you think it represents you okay. You have dozens and dozens of Facebook pages that are, when I asked for pages from Arma, Kansas, the only problem is that none of them is your very active City of Arma, Kansas Facebook page. And it would take somebody smarter than I to tell you what the problem with that is. But we need, when people look at Arma, to find your Facebook page, not this other one. This isn't a bad page. It's just the very generic one and not the one that you run. The one that you run looks like this. And it has lots of lost dogs and cats, a live link to the city meeting, and a celebration of someone's 50th anniversary. So it's a nice little folksy Facebook page. So then the 5-minute impression, if you are visitors, then you will know that I told you to go to every entrance and see what it looks like. So I'm going to tell you first what they said and then show you the photos that I took. Entering from Highway 69, there was a sign, but since it was running parallel to the road, we found it difficult to see. They found it to be a clean community with the signs informatively placed. Lots of various styles of housing noted, family style homes noted across town. And another person said it really liked the serenity of the appearance when first pulling in. Let's see what you think when you look at the pictures. And I think this is probably what they're talking about. Parallel sign. Then I want to show you, whoops. And I wanted to call to your attention this meth sign. I Googled it to find out what that meth sign stands for. It's a program that's designed to help businesses and citizens know what to look for in order to nip meth manufacturing in the bud. And if that training is ongoing, then I really salute you. I mean, meth is a problem in rural communities, probably most rural communities, I'm not sure. Although I think some laws have helped it with that problem. But as a visitor, when I look at that sign, I think, oh, this town has a meth problem. And because the sign is very old and battered, it makes me wonder whether there's anything behind it, whether there's any training or a real program behind it, or whether it's actually means anything. So I don't think I put it in the recommendations, but my personal belief is that that isn't helping you. Many of the downtown businesses had good signage and were easy to find. This is the visitors. And again, everyone greeted us and made small talk and asked if we needed any help. And the occupied buildings had a good presentation. That's a really good sign. You know, you can't control people. And when your citizens and your storekeepers are friendly like that, that's just a really great sign. I guess this is my comment. This is really great. It really stands out, and as it's clear, it's an empty building. It showcases that it's a large display opportunity, and if I were looking for something like that, I would be very interested. In the downtown business area, they noted lots of downtown businesses, and they named them. The buildings that were being used in good to average condition. There were a few rundown buildings that were not being used at the time. They commented on what isn't there, and namely a grocery and pharmacy. And then the restaurants, they made note of the Italian and Mexican restaurants. So here's, I'm going to give you quite a few pictures of downtown. I perceived this as being a housing in downtown Arma, and I checked with my colleagues and other rural specialists and asked them what their advice for downtown housing is. I see it often, and I always kind of want it to be distinctive as housing, but they disagree. They want it to look to blend into the rest of the Main Street. And so in my opinion, other than the fact that it needs to be painted up, just as anything would, if it was peeling, to look better, why, in my opinion, that does still blend in with the downtown facades. This gives you an idea of what the town looks like at 10 o'clock or so in the morning. And then I'm going to show you quite a few downtown buildings, because I think that's an important aspect of what you get immune to seeing over time. And while this isn't really downtown, they did comment on the grocery store, and that's why I put that there. Then if you look at the question about downtown amenities, then you'll know why people comment about the things that they comment on. I remember well, 70 first impressions ago at my first meeting, I said, you don't have any downtown restrooms. Well, since then, I have come to count on 4 fingers the number of downtown restrooms there are in the 70 communities that I've done first impressions for. So basically, just because we asked about it doesn't mean we expect them, but those were examples that we gave. And we added Wi-Fi not too long ago, and I think that's an important way to make your town seem very welcoming. It's like a virtual welcome to people to say, hey, we're glad you're here. The library, that Wi-Fi, oh, I guess we aren't looking at the pictures yet, but they talked about the Wi-Fi park with benches and tables and a stage for summertime bands, which is awesome. Parking was accessible. There was plenty of it. They have individual internet, but no hotspots for public. Now the pictures. And that Wi-Fi park, I think, is just awesome. I don't know whose idea that is, but kudos for that. That just presents very well. And you do have benches, and even in March, your planters look nice, at least in the pictures that I took. In the training, I talked to people about other retail shopping areas, and usually that's that place where the convenience store is, or the place by the highway. You've got your downtown, and then you've got that place by the highway. And even though these weren't all that placed by the highway, I noted that you had lots of businesses that I spotted all over town. This business in particular, I'm certain you're aware of it. That's probably not one of the best presentations for your town. I'm sure, like I say, most of the time I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I have no idea whether this is a business. I suspect that it is not, but I just think it's adorable how somebody is keeping their property, and it looks nice. And I'm always struck how many storage units we need all over rural Kansas and everywhere else. We Americans don't want to get rid of our stuff, do we? Industrial parks. There are a lot of things that are important to your community that we won't necessarily be good observers of. You don't necessarily need a sign at the industrial park because that's not how business is going to find you. As long as your town and your site is listed with location 1 at the Kansas Department of Commerce, they should be marketing and finding what they need to know. And just be aware that even though we love it when we get a new factory in town or something that employs a lot of people, it's the entrepreneurs, those people who start their own business, who are always going to be responsible for more than half of the jobs, the new jobs that are created every year. And so we really need to take care of our small businesses and those people who are making a go of it. Then also consider that global marketing makes your town accessible to purchasers all over the world. And you've got some nice businesses there. Anything you can do to foster additional marketing online will really help you to increase the pull of your community for sales tax revenue. So here's your industrial parks. They said that across the highway, there's a welding shop, a Dollar General, and a fire department. There appeared to be plenty of area for new or expanding industry. So healthcare services, you are blessed, really blessed in this area. We saw the Girard Medical Center and the Community Health Clinic downtown. The closest hospital is about 15 miles away, according to the visitors. And there's a community clinic provided by the Girard Medical Center. They did not notice a pharmacy, optometrist, or dentistry. And I would just tell you that some communities have a health tab on their website with the number of minutes to those services, which really gives you a good sense for the fact that again, we're in the middle of everywhere. If you're in Overland Park, Kansas, do you think it takes you 15 minutes to get to the hospital? Probably takes longer. So record it in terms of minutes and show them that they've got access to everything they need. You guys know that. You already live there. And, I say this because quality of life is what we're representing for people who are living there, and healthcare services contributes greatly to your quality of life. But you also want to tell new residents who might want to take your places or build a new house in your town, that these quality of life things are there. Don't keep it a secret. In terms of nursing care, I don't know whether they're right or wrong, but they cited as a nursing home with assisted living and long care nursing. And there is one nursing home that is a swing bed, but no senior citizen housing. And then housing all over Kansas. What we know is now what I told the visitors is you're not necessarily reflecting as if you could find a house to purchase, but just reflect on the houses that are already there. And one visitor said again, available housing appears to be very limited, and that would be true in every community. There are 5 houses listed on the current market, and some of those have pending sales. The visitor did not say what their source was on that. The housing would appeal to all incomes, but there aren't many for sale. It's good to note that they felt like your neighborhoods were quite appealing. And we asked them to go to City Hall and check on rental housing. And they couldn't tell if rental housing was available. Often you can't tell unless you ask somebody. So here's what we did find. I tried to take a picture if I saw a sign in the yard for sale, and there are not very many. I also tried to take a picture of lots of kinds of houses and lots of neighborhoods, but then I forget which neighborhood I was in when I take them. So I might have 2 houses next to each other for all I know. They really do look like a nice assortment. This housing data, according to this data from the census, you have 797 occupied houses. You have another almost 15%, according to the census data, I don't think is the most reliable on housing. And that's why when the Department of Commerce gives you a loan, they want you to do a housing study, because I think if they thought this was great data, they would use it. But it is the best that I have access to. And so I'll just give you what I know. And according to them, you have about 15% vacant housing. I don't know whether that rings true to you or not. Might be a source of discussion. In this particular case, I'm comparing your owner occupied housing with Kansas's data, and you're right at the same place. I clicked when I didn't mean to. Your household size is fairly small, and this is a fairly significant group of people who are without a computer or without an internet subscription. And again, it's the best data we have, but that really speaks, if we want those folks to succeed and not be impoverished, anything we can do with the library or with Wi-Fi access would be important. Your travel time is just, this is inconsistent. I'm sorry, I'll try to change it in the final copy so you can tell the difference. This is Kansas data. This is Pittsburgh area data. And I'm just going to put a flag right here, right now, about the fact that the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation has received funding from the Kansas legislature. Every year they receive $2 million for moderate income housing grants. But this year, the legislature increased it by 3,100%. That's now they have 62 million instead of 2 million. And this is just a huge opportunity. They're going to give new funding cycles every 3 months. If housing is an issue for your town, you might look into that. Your schools are a huge draw for your town. The elementary and junior high school are together. They didn't see early childhood education opportunities or Head Start, but Pittsburgh State is nearby. And one thing that I've seen, and as I've gone to other schools, now that we have to lock all of our doors, it's hard for a new parent or a new visitor to figure out which door to go to. Something that I think is really cool is they might put gymnasium or auditorium entrance over a door, so that when you're the visitor to go into the basketball game for the first time, or when your grandma coming to your freshman's high school play, you know which door to go in. They're lovely schools. The school's website provided information. This is about school information. Could you find anything on the school? Because again, it's great that you have good schools, but are you going to tell anybody you've got great schools? And, you know, almost universally, what I see is every town loves their schools. I don't think I've run into hardly any town that doesn't love their schools, and they all have different reasons for why they love their schools, but they don't tell us those reasons. You can go to the website and you can see whether they're going to have hot dogs on Tuesday or pizza on Friday. You can see what you need to know for your student, but if you're thinking about becoming a student there, you really don't know why you should be. You don't know why we love our schools. And to me, that's a huge opportunity for a school system as great as yours. I found this website by accident. I was doing Mound City, Kansas, and I found Mound City, Missouri instead. And I think this is a great website to tell people on the very front page. For one thing, I loved seeing student pictures because it's a way that we can visualize. I mean, when you're looking at a new house or a new school, you want to say, hey, that looks like someplace I could be happy. And so here's about us. Why should you come to Mound City, Missouri to schools? And I thought that was super impressive. You've got great things to talk about, and we need to tell them. One visitor was not able to go to the city office, and we'll see that in her comments later. But that's something that I asked them to ask at the city office, so she didn't know the answer. On internet, and you know, I've tried to tell Child Care Aware that their stuff just is not available to people. People are looking for it and they can't find the data. So, and I don't think it's improved, but Child Care Aware is kind of where you need to go to find it. And here's the source for it. Child Care Aware says that you have child care for about 60% of the students in Crawford County, 60% of the children who need child care. That's not the worst I've seen, but it's not the best either. But what they found on their searches is one licensed daycare. And if you were a visitor, you know that I tell you that you can talk to the people around town. So they made assumptions and they talked to people. In faith and religion. Oh, and by the way, we never have pictures of childcare, and that's not a fault. You know, it's just not terribly good practice to say, oh, we have a whole bunch of children in this building. So we don't expect to find where children are being cared for. So on faith and religion, folks saw a Methodist, a Christian, a Catholic church. Others saw a gospel and a gospel church. And so here's the pictures of the churches I saw. I did both Oswego's and Arma's at the same time, and I confess that some of the comments are getting mixed up in my mind about which town is which. Civic groups. Somebody, the same person who wasn't able to go to the city hall didn't find any information about that. Others said there was a philanthropic sorority, but no clubs. And I didn't know where to put the community garden. I think that was mentioned in somebody's first impressions or their 5-minute impressions. But that is a super nice. People noticed it. People saw it. They just didn't comment on it in this area. And your visitors talked about a senior center, but I don't see it captured in my pictures, so it must not have been terribly visible to me either. Although, honestly, I have missed some of the most obvious pictures, so it may be user error too. Public infrastructure. This question is about all the other places around town, not just downtown. Within the town, there was great signage, and I thought your signage was fresh and clean and spiffy and told just what we needed to know. The streets were all in good condition, with the main north-south road being nicely paved with sidewalks available. There wasn't much landscaping that caught my eye as we drove through town. And they were mostly here in March and April. That's not the best. But I have to say, I've noticed in many towns that the towns that keep their boxes pretty or their landscaping nice kind of look uniformly good during the summer too. The signs were in great shape. I wish kids didn't use them as for target practice, but I concur that there's nice signs here. And you may recognize this road in I think one of the newer areas of town that's gravel, and gravel works too. Some things we just can't see as visitors. We ask about sidewalks, but we don't know. Are they in the places that you need them to be? And do you have safe routes to school? There is nothing that thrills me more than to be in a small town when the kids are getting out of school and to see them going free range all over town on their bikes. That's the hallmark of a small town, something you can do in Arma that I could never do with my kids in Topeka. That's something to consider. At City Hall, as I told you, one person was not able, oh, hold it, I see that on the next slide. One person said I was very well received. The city clerk was knowledgeable and very open about any problems that they had. One person said, I drove around town and attempted to visit City Hall the first time at 12:30. There was a small sign that said, be gone and I'll be back soon. And then they tried back at 1:45 and still the door was locked. And, my only comment is those things happened. But consider changing the sign to name a specific time that you'll be back, and that would be more user-friendly. The police station was located directly next to the City Hall building, and the fire station is west of the highway. And the fire station, I thought that they adequate for a small town. I thought that was a pretty extraordinary fire station. I bet you're proud of that. And the reason I always put this ISO rating here is because I've become aware that in some communities, if the volunteers don't have adequate training or they don't have adequate equipment, why your ISO public protection classification is not great, and that has a big impact on your each one of your houses and its fire insurance. One community told me that when their city fire volunteers got better training and improved their rating, it saved every person in the village $300 a year on their on their insurance. So I just put that there to remind you to make sure that to check on that, because it has impact for you and the businesses in your town. I heard about this from your volunteers. It's really sad. I don't know whether this has changed in the past 6 months, whether the library is open again, but in March, it was not. You had a mold problem, I think, but one visitor got a peek inside and she said it was really nice, and that we try to meet any other community need. And I would point to that outdoor Wi-Fi park as just being an awesome place. This visitor also said there's a small dog park, and I wasn't aware of that. The library is easy to access and looks inviting, and it's next to the community center. And if the community center is there, I didn't recognize it. So is it right next to it?
inside it. It's not separated. They do have a little area inside the library that's called the community center.
Oh, okay, okay, and that makes sense too, okay.
And you had mentioned senior citizen center. It was there was a photograph of it in the same slide as the nursing home. It was called
Really? And that was the senior
So
center?
that was the senior center that you were looking for.
Okay, thank you very much. So the senior center was in the slide with the nursing home.
And apartments are senior housing. Yeah. And disability housing.
I think they're more low income housing.
Okay.
So
Yeah, but a lot
they're
of
not,
seniors live there.
yeah, so it's not strictly senior housing, but it's low income.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, that's the way it usually is. And often it is called low income / senior housing. So here's the library. And they talked about city parks. Is there something you wanted to share, Julie?
They just said the library's open again.
Oh, good. That's good. I'm glad. Okay. City parks. The city park has a great place for playing and other outdoor activities. They noticed the city pool, the volleyball nets, and several baseball and softball complexes. Imagine those are quiet again now, but that's a fun place to be in a small town in the summer. The city, there were several and all were well kept. You know, when I see a beautiful restroom like this, I have come to appreciate in Topeka, when we built a new restroom, the mayor of Topeka said, "You are kidding me. That restroom costs more than my house." And I mean, they are a real asset, but they really make the town livable for people to use that park. So good job. There were no walking tracks, but there were ballparks, playgrounds, and fishing ponds noted. And I don't know whether that's something you've considered. We had a great first impressions call this last Friday about the value of walking tracks, and you might find that interesting. I'll show it to you at the end. Recreation. Are you well known for an attraction or event? They knew that you were known for your homecoming celebration. That's a 3-day event, and several visitors commented on it. And I found this when I did it last week. Recreation and tourism. We asked about natural or man-made features. Behind one of the parks was a fishing pond. It looked very inviting. The mining museum. This visitor launched into ideas for you. They did see the mining museum, the community pond for a family fishing day. And then they started thinking about other things you could do. High school students paint the downtown windows, a community barbecue, street dances on Friday night. And here's your mural, lovely mural. You know, when I came to K-State, one of the things I thought maybe students could do for communities was to paint murals. But you guys don't need any help. Every community just has beautiful murals, and I think they add so much, especially to a building that just has a great big blank wall. A visitor center. This was the visitor who couldn't get into City Hall, so she thought you should have some other place for visitors. And my comment would be just that, you know, if it was accessible on the website, if there were links to it on the website, that would be another great site to have that information. And these are the things that I tell them to ask in the City Hall: where to find childcare, rental housing. You can't keep up with which houses are empty and which ones are ready to be rented. So most city clerks will have a list of landlords with rental property, and then an idea about which civic groups meet. And so I put this here just to, as a kind of a idea to check with, I don't know if Betty's in the room there, but to check with Betty and see if she has these, if somebody were to ask, does she have these things? If you've got a new teacher coming to town, these are things that new teacher might want to know. We asked them, what would you bring you back? Schroeder's Meat Shop. They're well known in the area for their meats. In fact, I have some Schroeder's sausage in my freezer right now. A Mexican restaurant and the Italian restaurant. That person was excited about the Italian restaurant. The most positive observations are the outdoor public facilities like the parks, the pool, and the recreation. The community itself was well kept and clean. The schools looked to be in nice shape. And they felt like it was clean and friendly with very few run down or tear down properties. And that's really something, because that means individuals themselves kept those properties nice. It was quiet, which means a lot in this day and age. The local community patrons were very nice and they were proud of their communities. That emphasis is the writers. It would be nice. She must have talked to somebody about the fact that it would be nice if there were more volunteers. But she understood that it was hard to get volunteers. Biggest obstacles or challenges is the lack of available housing and businesses offered to citizens. There are many closed businesses or lack of places to visit on a Friday afternoon. There was not a big, actually, and I would say it's fantastic if every business can be open every day, but it's not at all unusual in a small town to understand that certain things aren't open on certain days. So, that's a difficulty in the fact that we come on only one day. There was not a big appeal for me of small town living. There seemed to be a lack of basic necessities provided. So traveling outside of the town would be necessary to meet my family's basic needs. And we don't know more than that. So we don't know what she's missing. Maybe you know what you wish you had in your town. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. Another person said the same problem as all small communities. It's the loss of the downtown. Lack of community involvement and participation and the availability of resources and services. When looking at recruiting new families into town, what would draw them here? That would be one thing that I would suggest focusing on and trying to improve, whether it be a walking trail, activities for the kids, more family type activities, etc. So if that's obvious to you, what would draw them there, then make it obvious to us about what would draw, why we should want to be there. What will you remember? This is a photo from Google Earth. And I took it because I was looking for a business that I thought I'd missed. The opportunity for growth, it offered a lot of neat businesses that are there, or old businesses that used to be there, but there are opportunities for people to come in and thrive in this small town. And as I double checked my photos to look for things I might have missed, I took this street view of this building, but it looks to me like it might have all been empty during December of 2016, but a number of several of those spots in my photos appear to be filled now. So that's the transient nature of downtown businesses. What will you remember 6 months from now? It's clean with very friendly people. The Italian restaurant, it's a quaint town. I'd love to have a cruise night with my local card club if they were to host one. So then I tried to make a few recommendations. As you remember, when I looked for City of Arma Facebook page, when I looked for Arma, Kansas, it did not come up in the list. So I think that's called indexing, and maybe somebody can help you figure out why it doesn't come up. What we're proud of on a landing page for Northeast schools, people like to see their kids' pictures, and having their kids' pictures out there gives me a sense of what my child or my grandchild might experience if they came to Northeast schools. And then finally, we need to figure this out so that we have one cohesive city representation. And I hope that we can work with that citizen to get that resolved. It's great if that person wants to maintain it for you, but the city needs to be able to decide what goes on it. Well, we always tell our visitors that you will be anonymous to the other town, and I don't think it's really a problem, but I want to thank the visitors, and I'm tempted to say your names, but you know who you are, and I won't say them out loud in case you really do want to stay anonymous to the other community. But then, so the next steps are just to start talking about what you heard today, and take this video. The video will be posted online probably in the next 24 hours, and you can look at it and share it with others who might not have been able to be here. And I'm going to take just a few more pages to promote some opportunities for you, some other things that K-State Research and Extension does. I asked my colleagues, and Arma has never been a member of the Kansas Pride Organization. And it's even got grants now. It hasn't always, but it has got grants now, small grants. But it's local community support. It's 50 years old. It's driven by the Kansas Department of Commerce and K-State Research and Extension and a nonprofit governing board. But it helps communities to identify what they would like to preserve, create, and improve, and helps volunteers pull together to create their ideal future. And First Impressions is the perfect way to start. You've had an identification process. Then there's a youth community perceptions and the youth community assessment. The youth would do it on your own community. And that's a nice way to get, it's a requirement for graduation now that students need to do community service. So if you have somebody to sponsor this, this is a great way to hear from your students. What do they like about their community and what would they change? We offer grant writing classes. And yes.
No, you're good.
Okay. We offer grant writing classes and support if somebody wants to learn to write the grant for the housing money. And then I alluded earlier several times. One was we have a First Friday e-call, which is about entrepreneurship. And every call is recorded. And the one last week was about how walking trails bring people to town to buy sausage. And then so that's it, the first Friday at 9:30 in the morning, and they're all recorded. Ben Winchester spoke on that call at another time. And remote work is just such a huge opportunity for folks. Julie and I both took that. They are saying that the pivot to remote work is the fastest transformation of the labor market since World War II. And so K-State Research and Extension has developed in cooperation with the Utah State. We've brought that program to Kansas, and Julie and I both took that. We were in the same class. It's a certification, and Francis, our director there, took the leader training. So if you have to supervise workers that are not in your town, why, that's a very helpful resource. We have a rural grocery initiative that can help with if you decide to start up that grocery store. And then if you want ideas for small town living, I love this resource. They do a subscription. I have to say they've backed off a little in the last year or so, but this was something that they quoted on this site. That according to a Gallup poll, the only people who didn't, the Americans under age 30 are the only group of people whose top desired place to live is not rural. Everybody else thought that rural would be their ideal place to live. And as people are seeing climate change issues with fires and floods on the coastline, there are people moving and seeking transition from coast to higher ground. And that's, I think, why we're talking about these sustainable issues, is because your community might well be a benefit from new blood in it. This is what I was talking about earlier about co-marketing. Maple Hill, Kansas is much smaller than you. It has a total of 2 businesses. And basically they market together and to figure out when one of them is going to be open and make the other one open. So basically, that's what I meant by co-marketing. We also have the Kansas Department of Agriculture will help you to think about the most strategic thing that you want to bring to your community in terms of taking advantage of the agriculture around your community, so that we don't have somebody who decides to open up a chicken plant only to find out that the residents don't want it there. All right, so that's what I have. Thank you so much for your patience. And now Julie's going to lead you in a conversation.